Jake, we've done this a few times with players, and if you're lined up in a schoolyard and you've got every single AFL player in front of you, and you've got number one pick, who would you be picking? Who would you be picking actually at the moment, right now?
Like based on this year, or just
form right now?
Form right now for one game tomorrow, or for like the career?
For one game tomorrow.
I'd love to say Tom Liberatore.
Really?
He's been so good. I still think it's hard to go past Nick Dacos, but yeah, Liber has been sensational this year.
Let's put that on hold. That's good fun. But what if you were doing it with coaches? You had all 18 coaches in front of you, only the current 18 coaches that are available. Which coach are you taking with the number one pick?
I've probably got 5 names in my head that I've been going back and forth on as to who I would take. I might surprise you and say I will take Chris Scott. Definitely does. He's done enough to deserve it, I think. I know I've been critical of the Cats, but Chris Scott is tactically a very, very, very intelligent coach. I mean, that might...
You talk about just tweaking things.
He does so much. And things that you don't even... Things that you don't notice, things that I don't notice. And then you look back and you think, oh, shit, see what he did 2 weeks ago. They decided that they were going to start making a change with how they play this player a bit more up the ground or whatever it might be. He does so many subtle things throughout games, more than any other coach. The only other coach I reckon that comes close is Sam Mitchell, who's also in there. But Mitchell doesn't have the runs on the board, so to speak, because he hasn't been coaching as long, to sort of say, it's a little bit disrespectful to Chris Scott to say that Sam Mitchell's gone ahead of him already when he has no premierships. He's won one final. Well, he has a losing record.
You've got a couple of we got a 3 and a 4-time premiership coach also currently.
Yeah, I understand
in the schoolyard.
I understand that, but what's that 4-time premiership coach doing at the moment?
Currently toiling away, but he got a win on the weekend.
Okay, and the 3-time is the other guy that I
We were just talking about it and how effective they've been at using the strengths of the lists that he has.
Are you talking about Clarkson?
Oh, sorry, Hardwick.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Hardwick is my third guy. So it's Scott, it is Mitchell, and it's Hardwick. And I think Hardwick gets forgotten. No coach has done more in the last 10 years than Damien Hardwick.
Well, I think you've actually. I've got exact same top 3, but I've put Hardwick in front of Mitchell because of what you just said about Chris Scott, the longevity for it. Yes, Hardwick took a year out of the game, but we forget that the 6 or 7 years that he had at Richmond, that should sort of come into it. Sam Mitchell, he's been good, but he's only sort of done it for 3 years, and he's come in and he's been really innovative and made changes. But the two for me, having Chris Scott at the top is because you look back at Geelong, going all the way since he's coached them. They've never had a weakness, and if they have had a weakness, it's been a 4-week weakness, and they fix it. So at the end of every season, when you look at Geelong, you're like, well, they're doing a lot of, why didn't they win the premiership? Because they couldn't quite get top 6 in these 3, but they're never bottom 3 in anything. Damien Hardwick, a bit similar. He's very much Richmond, did have a lot of weaknesses, but he was able to sort of mask those. Sam Mitchell, to me, we haven't seen it yet. He's had the he's just finished his honeymoon period now. He's come in, he's brought in a beautiful game plan. But I think the next step is when Hawthorn starts to get figured out a little bit and teams can sort of match up, how does he keep the momentum going, which is what Scott and Hardwick have in the bag.
I think something to be said about Scott as well, because people will say, well, hang on a minute, Chris Scott, he inherited a premiership list, he won it's like, even if that is 100% the case, the fact that, how long has he been there? 13 years? He's kept them up there. So what's harder?
Okay, so Chris Scott, yeah, he inherited a premiership list. Okay, but
let's
go through.
I'm not saying that I'm saying that.
He also gets the genuine home ground advantage in Victoria.
I'm not saying...
He also gets players walking through the door wanting to come and play with
they've had Jeremy Cameron, they've had Patrick Dangerfield, Bailey Smith.
A few.
They've obviously... But you need luck, you need things to go your way. But I do think it is fair for him to be at the top of the pile. Now, there is one name we haven't mentioned yet.
Well, there are 2 names, actually. The last 2 premiership coaches. I'd just like to point out as well, before we move on to those 2, Chris Scott, 67.7% win rate over the past 15 years, which is comfortably the most of anyone who's had that tenure. One of two coaches that has a win-loss record above 60 currently.
The other one, which had this question been posed a year ago, would have certainly been in the conversation, is John Longmire, because his numbers were almost identical to Chris Scott.
Yes.
And we sort of forget about him.
Similar kind of stays up. If they go down, they come back up again.
He gets dinged quite a lot for the record in grand finals, where I think I said after they lost that grand final.
Longmire's out of the question anyway.
It feels a bit like the LeBron thing. You get penalised for going too far.
So the reason I raise this is Rowan Connolly penned an article on ESPN.com.au/AFL, basically praising Craig McRae And you talk about win-loss records, and I know it's a smaller sample size, but he is at a strike rate of 70.2 wins.
Yeah.
And again, a bit of a down year last year, but has immediately come back up, has quashed ideas of the club and the team that he rolls out being too old or too experienced, makes these in-game adjustments, did the close game training, won a lot of games, has the flag.
So he
came
comes
close.
in.
I think that's a brave, and whether it's all coaching or a list move, you spoke about how, win a premiership and sort of dip down the way they did. To sort of look at your list and go, we need to get older, we just need more experience. It's sort of like they made that brave call of going, well, instead of sort of jumping off the ship and sort of rebuilding again, we're going to actually try to double down on what we had in 2023 by bringing in older players, and they've been able to do it. You were very sceptical, I know, at the start of the year, thinking they were going to slide because of it.
It was one or the other for me.
Yeah.
I think I said, I was like, they could go one of both ways.
So
I wouldn't be
Craig
surprised if they slid, and they wouldn't be surprised if they rose back up, right?
Craig McRae comes in, inherits the anti-Scott, inherits the bottom four side.
Yeah.
Takes
Prelim
them
next
to a
year.
prelim, lose by a point. Following year, win the flag. The next year, you do what most teams do, and they sort of have a premiership hangover. But
especially
it wasn't
recent
that bad.
trends,
They still only just missed finals. And now this year, they're premiership favourite again. What more can you really do? That's one of the best... I know it feels early, but if Collingwood win the flag this year, we'll be talking about it as one of the best 4-year stretches from where that club was to where it is. Like ever, in terms of I know it sounds crazy, but to say this is where they were 4 years ago, in the next 4 years they've gone to a prelim and then won 2 other flags with a new coach. It's extraordinary. So he's another one that has to be in consideration. You love throwing these questions at us. Who are you taking?
I think I'm taking... I said this to you
We've
before.
made a case for 5 coaches.
Well, I was spitballing this with Rowan before we wrote the column. We were coming up with the idea together, and I came up with McRae. So I think I'm looking at
you
McRae.
can
And I
have
know
McRae.
that it's a small sample size. That's the caveat.
Yeah.
But I came up with Chris Scott being a pretty comfortable second as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I just think that, I think in terms of making adjustments, the game plan, having the tight-knit group that he has, we were talking about a lot of on-field stuff, but the off-field stuff too, just being able to turn that club from what it was under Buckley and Maguire to that, this kind of, do better report, the boys club, the attitude, all that kind of stuff, to kind of what seems to be a place that has just good men working for it and playing for it. And it's kind of hard as a Carlton fan to admit this, but they're not a hateable team. A lot of these guys are very likeable, and they carry themselves so well. The skipper just carries himself well, and I mean, we saw it in the press conference after the win, just how he was raw and emotional and honest about the whole Selwood situation as well. And on-field's one thing, but off-field's another. And I think he's got a great mix and has been able to, over his 4-year tenure or whatever it is, has been able to turn the club around.
All right, so now let's talk worst coaches in the league.